do you have any roles that were, like roles of all your roles that were particularly difficult for you? Like something maybe you did or you had to, were difficult for you to get into or try?
Okay, so not physically, like emotionally?
Like emotionally, or like maybe just the character yourself, you had to maybe keep redoing it, or something you had difficulty with?
There is a show called Speed Grapher. Are you all familiar with that one?
Yeah.
Thank you. I play like two very minor roles in that show. One is Yui, and then one is Yui as an older person. So I can't remember the guy's name, but he was one of the bad guys. He had like hair like this, like Robert Smith from The Cure. Super dark feelings, you know. He had glasses. He wasn't the main bad guy, but he was like the main bad guy's sidekick. He was like the second boss you had to defeat to get to the big boss, you know. So I just broke down in video game land. So he was a bad guy, and the whole premise of Speed Grapher, and I don't mean to spoil it or anything, the whole premise of Speed Grapher is like this very like erotic sort of hyper-sexualized fantasy club thing, and it's about class and wealth and, you know, the way that society can destroy itself and stuff like that, and how money plays into all of that, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this club where awful dirty things happen, and then there are superpowers involved and stuff like that, and there are like within this club there are members that are like super special and have cool superpowers that are hypersexualized and no big deal. So everybody wants to be in this club, and so they end up like giving all this money and owing all this money to the bad guys who run the club, and it's bad. Sorry, I'm easily distracted. So he, the second bad guy with the Robert Smith hair, he is a bad guy because his parents succumbed to that club a million years ago, and so when he was a child, he watched his parents get murdered for their debt, and he and his sister were sold into slavery, right? Wow. He escapes and he becomes this bad guy. And so he's like, bad guy, but this is why he's a bad guy. Anyway, so his sister, so it's like this really touching scene with like, little sister, like waking brother up, and so I'm this little girl, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm so funny and cute and little and innocent. And then like he goes downstairs and like his parents are dead, and he's like, stop, don't come down. I'm like, what? What's going on there? Oh my God! And then like I'm ripped from my brother's arms, and he spends the rest of like his life like searching for me, but he's also a bad guy still. So then he finally finds me, and this is where can I say the F word? Or, this is where the effed up part is, right? And the part that was really hard because it's anime and movies and stories in general are a reflection of society and a reflection of reality, even if they are hyper, hyperbolic or anything like that. It's still something that happens. Like there are still like awful people in the world that are willing to murder people's parents and sell them into slavery, and that's effed. And we're all lucky enough to be in a society where there are ramifications for things like that. But in this alternate world that I was portraying this young girl, there weren't ramifications. There wasn't any sort of way you could go to the police. Like, that wasn't part of the storyline. So to play like, and I have a big brother, and he's awesome, and he's been one of my big supporters. Hi, Bubba. So you get there, right? Like you imagine like you're this little girl again, and you're with your older brother, and you're like, Bubba, wake up! Bubba, wake up! Leave me alone. Bubba, wake up! And then like if he and I would be separated like that, and he'd become a bad guy, I would make him cut his hair. And then when he finally finds his sister, she's been sold into slavery, into sex slavery. And she's clearly like, she's emaciated and drugged, and she doesn't even recognize him, and is trying to seduce her brother for money. And like she's in a state, and he's dressed well because he like made it out and she didn't. And portraying her was really hard because it is a reality, and it is something that happens around the world. And like, it was very close to the beginning of my career at Funimation, and I was like, do I want to do this? Do I want to be part of something like this? Do I want to put my like, would I tell my mom about this? You know, like, is this something I could stand behind? And then I came to the realization that, like, absolutely, like, even if you're unaware of sex trafficking, even if you're unaware of FGM, even if you're unaware of, you know, who Pinochet is or anything like that, like these world things that are really important, that are easy to forget or easy to like turn a blind eye to, in watching Speed Grapher, like, yes, it's a really entertaining show. Yes, it's a very well-directed and written show. Yes, it's beautiful to watch and kind of gory and really oddly beautiful, but it's also a reality and a reflection of society that is terrifying and awful. And that is hands down emotionally the hardest scene I've ever done. And it was super short, but like just getting to that place, in my mind where like if I had been that girl in that time with that family and been sold into slavery and was now, you know, like 10 years later in a closet basically, like a horse, and just being used like that, and my brother shows up and I don't even know him, like, that was horrible. Horrible. Let's listen to a song. So yeah, that was the worst.
Thank you.
It was good. I mean, I'm really proud of it, but it was rough. Yes?
How was it dubbing the Evangelion 2.22 movie as Mari Illustris?
It was rad. Joining that franchise in general and being a part of it was a huge honor for me. Huge honor. And I was really excited to be able to work with everyone. I mean, everyone knows what Evangelion is, you know? And, right? And so coming out, knowing that we were coming out with a second movie at Funimation, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I was screaming a lot yesterday. Knowing that we were coming out with the movie, everyone wanted, right? Like everyone knew there was one new character, just a chick. And so everyone was so excited. And I got to the audition. They had like 3 days of auditions for one girl. And so I get there and I look at, like, they have all the pieces of paper at the front desk at Funimation when you come in, and it's like, this is where you're going, this is like just time slots and who's in each time slot. So there's, you know, 3 days of auditioning, 15-minute rounds of auditioning for 8 hours a day. And so it's like girl after girl after girl, like girls flew in from California just to audition, like ridiculous. So I came in and I like looked at the day, and I looked at the next day, and I looked at the next day, and I was like, well, that was a waste of time. Maybe I can get some fun with somebody after this. Like, I mean, it's daunting when you look at that many, and they're amazing actors, you know, like looking at that and being like, okay, like, well, maybe, probably not though. Like, the odds are not with me. So when I did get her, I was stoked. And plus, like, Maya Sakamoto is like the Britney Spears of Japan, and she played Mari. So I was like, I'm gonna be like Britney Spears in the Japanese. Amazing. The song was not easy to do at all. But Rita helped me with this, so that was nice. So being a part of that was rad, and getting to release that kind of anger was awesome. Plus, she's a super mysterious character that awesome things happen to later. So like getting to be part of her story and getting to be part of the narrative and the franchise in general has been really, really great, and I love it. It has a huge, close, big place in my heart, and I love the director. Mike is awesome. I love the cast. Mike is hilarious. Tatum, of course. Brina is one of my best friends. So I mean, it's funny because like she and I have only been to like 2 cons promoted together, and like, I'll be like, so what do you think of, like, people are like, oh, so, you know, what or not? And she's like, I really didn't say anything the whole movie. So she's like, Trina says a lot. Plus my character's insane, which makes it fun. It also has the most epic yell of my career, the F word. Just effing die, but the die's like... Only it's much louder, more intense, much more intense. It definitely taught me a lot more about screaming. I almost burst the mic. That was pretty cool. Like the engineer was like, that almost happened. I was like, really? That's amazing. He's like, yeah, noted. So like every time after that, like now when I go into Scream for Funimation or for shows, like they set the safety differently for me. They're like, oh, it's Trina. I have a lot of rage issues. I blame traffic in DFW.
As I understand it, Tatum did some of the scripting for Steins Gate. He worked on some of it. Does that mean he often told you guys what was going to happen before you got the script, or did you want to know?
Well, we don't see the scripts until we get there, and I didn't want to know. Like, I wanted to go on the journey with Moxie as she did it. So I really didn't want to know, and we were actually at a con. I think it was in New York, like upstate New York. It was over by Buffalo because I went to see my friend Matthew who lives in Buffalo, and then that's when I learned about the Indians. Like, there are a bunch of Indians in Buffalo, like the feathers, not the dogs. Yeah, Rochester maybe? I don't know. So we were there, and Tatum and Jamie and I were on the car, and we were going to lunch. He's like, oh my gosh, do you want to know what happens at Steins Gate? I was like, no, I don't want to know what happens. He's like, oh, it's amazing, you really want to know. I was like, I don't want to know, dude. He's like, well, maybe I could just tell you. And I was like, why would you tell me if I don't want to know? So he's like, well, I'm just going to tell you. Maybe I'm just making the whole thing up, but I really need to talk to somebody about it. And I was like, bro, like, that's really mean. So he tells me, like some pretty big spoilers about my character and about what actually happens and who. Has anybody seen it? Has anyone seen it? Yeah. Has anyone? Okay, so I'm not going to spoil it then. But the part in the closet, and there's me and somebody else, and Open Bay, and what the results are with me, and that whole thing. He's like, oh, well, this is what happens. And I'm like, what? He's like, maybe. Jerk, I told you I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. And he's like, well, I just have to talk to somebody about it, because we could, we're under contract, we can't say anything. So we were both in the middle of Steins Gate, and we couldn't say a word. So it was hard, because it was a really awesome show. It was emotionally draining a lot of the time, especially towards the end there, where you leave and you're just like, ah. And you try, I tried to talk to my siblings about it, who apparently are all geniuses and know all about time travel. Like, horrible. I asked them, I was talking to them about, I was like, yeah, I'm in this show and there's strings and butterflies and time travel. And my brother was like, it's called string theory. And my older sister was like, oh yeah, Stephen Hawking's book. And Teresa, my little sister, is like, oh yeah, blah, 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 string theory, blah, 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 butterfly effect, blah, blah, blah. And then my sister's like, you know what? I have the book in my bag. And pulls out this freaking Stephen Hawking, what is it, something about time book. And I was like, awesome, rad, thank you. I'm having a good idea. But, we all win. So I would try, it was really helpful because I talked to my brother about the lines, the world lines were really confusing for me, and where we were on a world line, and we had diagrams on the glass in between the booth and the sound engineer and director, and Colleen would be like, okay, go to line C, and you're here right now, but in a few moments you're going to be up here on B in the past, and I'm like, okay, because then you have to think if I was Makise on line B, before this happened, then this is what I was feeling then. But if I'm Makise here on line C, and I know about this, but in a few moments I'm going to be back to A, then I would be like this. So it's being the same character, but in different scenarios, and keeping track of those scenarios was different. Rather difficult. Yes, make it sense, girl.
So out of all the characters that you've played, if you could spend 24 hours in one of them, in your entire world and all that stuff, which character would you choose and why?
Of all the characters I've played, who would I want to? Mario.
Yeah.
I would totally want to kick it with Mari for 24 hours because I bet that girl is insane. Like she probably has like some secret agent, like sort of like evil supervillain lair or something, and I'd be like, hey, let's get a cheeseburger, and she'd be like, no, we're going to my evil lair. Let's do that. Like, I would like get in the suit and do the whole thing, you know, like that would be cool. Yeah, totally Mari, because she's so hardcore, and there's so many things that like you don't know about her, and like I know a little bit, but like as a character, like building her, like the things that you don't know, you imagine, right, as an actor, and so I've imagined this really awesome life for her. Yeah, really awesome. So I would want to kick it with Mari.